Welcome to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast.
Wherever you find American troops today, you'll find the men of the Transportation Corps. Enough and on time. That's the story we tell you today. The story of the Army Quartermaster Corps.
These youthful servicemen are members of the Army's Military Police Corps.
One of the most important forces behind the lines, the Army Ordnance Corps.
Welcome again to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. I am Sergeant First Class Adam Ross, Public Affairs NCOIC for 19th Expeditionary Sustainment Command here at Camp Henry, Republic of Korea. And today I'm joined by two of our experts from our G1 shop. I'm talking today to Captain Priscilla Abuan and Chief Warrant Officer 2 Corey Bollinger, the recently promoted Chief Warrant Officer 2. Thank you, both of you, for joining me here today.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, and so we're going to be talking about a lot of useful things that'll benefit people who are already in Korea and how things that'll affect their career, and also potentially soldiers out there that are thinking about coming to Korea, possibly for their next assignment. So we have a few acronyms to discuss. Maybe it might be new acronyms to you. Which one do you want to start first with?
Well, we can start off with we're talking about AIPs. We're talking about for those who are in relation to staying on pin. Is that what we're?
Okay, sure. Yeah, we got a lot of people who, it's something you got to think about relatively quickly if you're here just for a 1-year assignment, right?
That is absolutely true. Yes, and typically the soldiers should see something about that in their orders before they even arrive. Talking about the potential of actually requesting an AIP, but. So what is AIP? That is assignment incentive pay, and that really is just for you agreeing to extend an additional year in Korea. You will be paid an amount of $3,200 extra, and so there's also certain MOSs that are short on the peninsula here in Korea, which deemed as critical shortages, and 8th Army posts a list of those shortages every month. And if anybody falls within those MOSs and agrees to submits a request and agrees to do a AIP, they will actually receive $6,000 for the additional year on PIN.
That's nothing to sneeze at. That's
not at all.
It's a good chunk of change. So the regular AIP though is are there certain people who are not eligible for that, or it's not a given basically that you'll get it?
No, that is correct. So if anybody who is a major and above, unfortunately, is not able to request an AIP, and anybody who's above a master sergeant is not able to request. And then when it comes to the warrants, anybody who was a CW4 and above is not able to request an AIP.
Okay. So the seniors in the formation, not really for them, but
that is correct.
Okay. And ma'am, what anything else you want to add to that?
I know for the AIPs, you can only put in a limited number amount, because there are some people that will try to stay on pen for forever, really. But I think you can only put in twice.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I would have thought that you could only do it once, but you can do two AIPs. Like you could stay here 3 years and get 2 AIPs.
Yes, as long as you continue to meet the conditions every time you reapply.
Okay, and an AIP is only for 1 additional year.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And so, ma'am, we have the mic on you. Why don't you tell us a little? You recently arrived here in Korea. What can you tell us about what brought you to the Army and the human resources side of the house?
Oh wow. Okay, it's a bit of a story. Not really, but. So I commissioned out of San Diego State University in San Diego, California.
Go Aztecs.
Yes. We didn't have a great football team at the time, but I've been told they're doing great now. Kind of missed out on that part. But I come from a long, very broadly Navy and Marine Corps based family. And so it was always part of my goal to join the military. But stipulation in me growing up that way was that my father wouldn't allow me or support me unless I became an officer. So he's the one that really pushed me into the officer realm, and then forcing me into the ROTC program, into where I am now, and into the HR realm specifically. It was my branch of choice in my junior year of college. I specifically chose the AG branch because in assessing the levels and options of branches at the time for females and in general just officer paths, it seemed to be the most applicable into every aspect, whether I stayed in the military, wanted to go into a different government echelon in the federal government, or if I wanted to go into the civilian realm. It was very clearly cut, and it could be applicable regardless of whether I wanted to continue in the military or not.
Yeah, that your story sounds a little similar to previous podcast guest Major Fred Dakina. Have you met Major Dakina yet?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so also a San Diego, from a Navy background in San Diego. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you can listen to his podcast episode from a few weeks ago and get that one. And then Chief Bollinger, we've already had you on the podcast before. If I was going to direct our listeners so you don't have to repeat yourself, episode 22, that was your episode. So if you want to go hear about Chief Bollinger's origin story, you can do that. But we recently were promoted. We heard you guys, a lot of us got to meet your family for the first time at your promotion ceremony. So you're in your second year now of being in Korea, or you've already finished 1 year.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And so maybe bring us up to date on, how your family's enjoyed their time here.
Oh, well, my family's really enjoying their time here. I came here with my wife and 2 children. My children are both in high school now, and my daughter's going to graduate this June. So overall, my family has really found this experience to be a wonderful place to meet friends, and just feel comfortable and safe and grow in a great learning environment. I would, obviously be lying if I didn't say that one of the things that we were all looking forward to doing when we got here was to do a lot of travel, not just across Korea, but across the Asian continent. Unfortunately, COVID put the damper on that. But all in all, we are truly enjoying Korea. So much so that I decided to extend an additional 9 months. So I'll be doing almost 3 years here. But yes, great experience, and family loves it.
Yeah, last spring I was surprised to see the tradition they have on Camp Henry for the high schoolers, the graduating high schoolers, where they put the big portraits of them around posts. So we'll be seeing your daughter up there somewhere on Camp Walker this spring. But that's great. Congratulations to her. All right, and so back to the topic at hand. What's the next acronym you want to touch on?
Well, so anybody else who may or may not be able to do an AIP, but want to take another consideration of extending their time here on Korea, may look at doing what we call an IPCOT, or In-Place Consecutive Overseas Tour. In place meaning they're actually going to stay where they're located. So if you're down here in the 19th ESC Daegu area, you would submit a request that goes all the way up to HRC, requesting to stay here for another tour. There's also another term we call it ITCOT, which is an intra-theater consecutive overseas tour. So that might be maybe you're looking to do a somewhere on the Korean Peninsula, but not necessarily exactly in the Daegu area if you were down here. So why would I want to do a IPCOT or ITCOT over an AIP if I could choose one or the other? Well, there is no monetary benefit for doing an ITCOT. However, what you do receive is a free flight based upon what your home record is. So you would get that flight, a round-trip flight that you must take, ideally in between your 2 tours, but based upon if you submit to do a deferment, you must complete that round-trip flight before your next tour ends. And so that's going to allow you to, maybe if you're from Miami, you can submit a request and they will put together flights for you to be able to travel to Miami. But you're saying, well, I'm from Miami, but I don't want to go there. I actually just want to go maybe to Washington, D.C. Well, all they're going to do is base where the cost for you to go to your home record, and adjust that to say, okay, well, we will pay for you to have this or it's a round trip flight to elsewhere, so to you to go to DC. So that is a great benefit for those who are interested in doing a consecutive overseas tour as opposed to AIP.
And is that are they paying for that flight just for the soldier or your dependents as well?
Oh, that includes the dependents as well, absolutely.
So that could be, potentially several $1,000s worth of incentive, really.
Absolutely, especially if you got a larger family, 4 or 5, and we're talking about how we all know the cost of flights are really expensive today. So, maybe even that AIP price of $6,000 won't even cover that potentially. So,
definitely,
yes, it could be a really good benefit.
Okay, yeah, that's something, definitely to think about. And then so they would, and like in my case, there's only one other E7 position for me in Area 4, and so like when I was in my last marketplace, we were looking at potentially competing for one of the positions for me in Humphreys, and so not only would we get that flight if I had chosen that position, but they would obviously pay for us to move to Humphreys.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so you get that too.
That's part of that as well. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and what are some and that doesn't, for like Japan or something, that wouldn't be one of those, right?
No, that would not be considered in a ITCOT or anything like that.
That would be a COT.
So that would be a COT. Okay, absolutely. And so yes, a COT in general, a consecutive overseas tour, is going to entitle you to the ability to have that flight to go to your home of record in between the two tours. So even if that's in Europe or anywhere else, that's considered OCONUS.
Yeah, like for that, I remember one of the sergeants major previously at Camp Carroll, I remember he went to Germany after Korea, and so like they flew home and then they flew to Germany, and so Army picked up the bill for all that.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Anything you want to touch on with that, ma'am?
Not specifically. I think you hit the nail on the head, distinguishing between the in-place, and just the regular consecutive overseas tour. Because I know usually, such as Chief Bollinger here, some people just love to stay overseas. And if that's the case, then there's so many incentives to move from an OCONUS location to a different OCONUS location instead of going from OCONUS back to CONUS, even though you want to go back OCONUS. So it's a good consideration, especially for stability purposes. I personally don't have children, but hearing stories from moving OCONUS with your family, with young children, a dog, and 18 bags stuffed into a hotel room, like Chief Bollinger did, then definitely the IPCOTs and the ITCOTs sound very appealing, even for me, and I don't have kids.
Yeah, the one of the biggest hiccups on my family's journey to Korea was actually me leaving my passport in the taxi that dropped us off at the airport. Luckily, was that we realized it as soon as we got to the check-in, and they were able to circle back. But yeah, so there's a lot of considerations to make. But I do want to go back to one thing you said, Chief, because that for those consecutive tours that involves HRC, and so it's not so much a local process as it is involving HRC. So the timeline is
critical, absolutely critical, especially now that we both we have these manning cycles that we work with now, both on the enlisted side as well on the officer side. So being able to make sure you're looking at when it's time for you to be looked into the marketplace, and going on assignment, you need to make sure that you're submitting those requests quick, fast, in a hurry if you're intended to try to do one of those specifically on the peninsula. Otherwise, yes, you can indeed look for those particular assignments. Like you said yourself, you found the one that was up in Humphreys that you were looking at through the EMC, enlisted manning cycle, and it's even through that process. Yes, it's the same thing. You're still going to receive that COT entitlement. But yes.
And so for someone with their families here, like you and I, we would be getting another 2-year assignment if we did the intra-theater consecutive overseas tour.
Yes, because this is a whole new tour that you're doing with in command sponsorship. Yes.
But with if you're just here unaccompanied, a 1-year tour, it would just be another year, right?
Yes, unaccompanied, or otherwise known in Korea as a restricted tour. That's a little different here in Korea. But yeah, as restricted tour, it will only be 1 more year. That is correct.
So a lot of options on the table, but the key theme is to start looking at those early, especially if you're on a 1-year restricted tour.
I cannot stress that enough. Please look at if you were just, even the thought just goes across your mind briefly to extend. Get with your S1, your G1, quick, fast, in a hurry, and start to get the process going. If that's something you really want to do, to make sure that you don't get in a situation where you run out of time, and based upon the market process, you just are not able to take advantage of it.
And for our junior enlisted soldiers, especially, a lot of those decisions too could impact their ETS date. Like they would need to re-enlist in order to take advantage of that. Correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. But based upon whatever the assignment is, you may incur additional service obligation.
Okay, great. And so I think is that all we're talking about with regards to people already on PEN?
Well,
there's one more.
Okay.
Yeah, the FST.
Oh, FST. Okay.
Foreign Service Tour Extensions. So that one is a little more broad. You don't have to qualify for it in a certain MOS or density or how critical your MOS shortage is on PEN. You can do it for, I believe, up to 1 year and every 30-day increments. So then it gives you a little more flexibility if you don't want to stay for an entire year. Maybe you have other extenuating circumstances where you maybe only want to extend for 6 months. I know some people, if there are some shortages that are hard to fill here in Korea, especially for officers, then they might decide to extend for a few months in order to fill the gap between their incoming person to fill their position. And I know for 1 year tours, that usually comes very quickly. For instance, if you're in a higher billet that doesn't get a lot of bids on in the officer marketplace, for instance, and you're an unaccompanied single officer, then usually that's the market that's hard to keep because incentive isn't always there, especially if they didn't take advantage of the 1 year here, then it's harder to keep. So it gives you a little more flexibility to not just put 1 year on the table. Then you can do it for a few months, and it seems a little more appealing in everybody's sense, and to get everyone to get everyone on board per se in a peaceful manner.
Okay. And so, and with an FST, then there's no additional incentives, is just giving someone more time?
That is correct.
Okay. But that's available to enlisted and officers.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And that's another one. That's more a local decision, or does that also involve HRC?
That depends. If you are already on assignment, then that's definitely gonna be going up to HRC. But if you're like 6 months out or whatnot, that may only have to go up to the user pack level. So it really depends. It really depends.
All right. And so now we can transition to people possibly considering coming to Korea. And so we were just talking, ma'am, about assignments that don't get filled. And what can you talk about when you were talking to someone who's considering coming to Korea? You made the choice to come to Korea, or maybe you didn't. I don't know.
No, I did. I made the choice. This was actually my number one assignment, and the person I interviewed with was actually sitting right next to me, Chief Bollinger. So I'll say it was before the interview, this assignment specifically, without having any contact with, Lieutenant Colonel Nieto, the rest of the chain of command, and my sponsor at the time, and all we were doing was playing this game on AIM, on trying to get pings on maybe who wants me and if I want them as well as an assignment. And after doing numerous interviews with different kinds of commands across CONUS, and I finally got this interview with Lieutenant Colonel Nieto and Chief Bollinger, and trying to set up a time, of course, between Central Standard Time, where I was in Fort Hood, Texas, and between here in Area 4. I think we had a few rounds of trying to get get a time worked out. And it was actually my very last interview in the marketplace where I was like getting close into where I had to put in my final 1-for-1 match. And after this interview, we've actually spent most of the time just really talking about what I wanted out of an assignment. And exactly what I wanted was what 19th ESC and Korea could offer me. I wanted to see something new. I wanted a different kind of environment. I had spent 4 years and some change in a cab, so that's all I really knew. But I also didn't want to just stay conventional and just, kick around into a BCT, which is, of course, abundant in Fort Hood, Texas. And I wanted a different kind of role. And being in an ESC, of course, in a division level or a division equivalent echelon, you're thinking on the strategic side. So I personally thought I had exhausted the tactical and even a little bit of the operational side in the battalion and touching onto the brigade. I wanted something that could develop my career since I'm already KD complete, but also give me an edge from my peers, which in ESC and TSCs aren't widely offered. So I think it's an untapped little diamond in the rough that people don't usually think about to see, especially for non-logisticians. I know you think ESCs and you just go straight into like logisticians, 90, 91, 88, 89s. But like us sitting here with 42s and yourself, sir, as a PAO, like there's so many opportunities here in other type of units that I don't think people understand that this level and type of unit and its culture, specifically its culture, is amazing. My reception in the G1 shop specifically was definitely, I'll say, unmatched. I was met personally getting off the bus into my hotel room, arriving here on Camp Walker by Chief Bollinger. And the very next day, Lieutenant Colonel Nieto came to meet me in the lobby and gave me this little baggie of snacks and water. And I'd never had that before. So I'll say the personal culture here in the 19th ESC, specifically the 19th ESC, has been amazing. And I didn't have that a lot in my previous unit. So it was completely refreshing and made me feel welcome. So to say that 19th ESC is a very close-knit and personalized family is an understatement. So I don't think people, for me, that was the biggest kicker. Was, of course, the assignment looked great, the location looked great here in Area 4, but the interview with the people in 19th ESC is what really sold me. Because, you can do whatever job you want, anywhere you want, but the people can really change your perception of that entire location, that entire job, and even your entire MOS. You can decide or not stay in that MOS specifically because someone that you worked with.
Yeah, that's really wonderfully put, ma'am. I'm glad you had such a great experience with that. And is this your first time in Korea, period? Or
it is, yes.
Because I think for a lot of soldiers, maybe they had been here on a TDY to Humphreys or to KC, something like, and not to disparage either of those posts, but that can maybe color their impression of Korea, maybe if they didn't enjoy their time there. But I mean, you've seen that. I mean, we've seen Area 4 is a much different. It's very different than those other Korea experiences. We're right in Daegu, a city the size of Chicago, actually, which, I mean, it really is, we're in the city here, we're not a base that's adjacent to another population. But, I mean, what can you say about the location, how you've experienced it so far, ma'am?
Oh, okay. So after spending a few weeks at Camp Humphreys for my quarantine, and I arrived over Christmas, so I spent an extended amount of time in Camp Humphreys trying to in-process. So I'll say even just a few weeks there being confined to Camp Humphreys and even seeing what's offered here between all the 3 installations in Area 4, coming out of Camp Humphreys, if I walked out of that barracks room, I would have never known I was in Korea whatsoever.
True.
If I just took pictures around, then I could say I'm back at Fort Hood and no one would say anything. They'd say, "Oh, it looks cold, but it looks right. There's a lot of concrete. It's flat." And I thought it was really cool coming out of Camp Walker. The first time I went driving and got my car, it was a little scary. I'll say I think for everyone, that first drive out the gates is a little intimidating, especially with, the local driving
culture,
mannerisms and cultures and road etiquette is very different than in the United States.
Yeah, and so my previous experience in Korea was actually in Yongsan, and so I spent a lot of time in Seoul, and so I thought I had already seen everything Korea had to offer. I thought I felt really familiar with Korea, but even my first time going out of Camp Walker, driving to Henry, I was like, whoa, I felt like, I'm in a completely different place. And I mean, Korea really is such a diverse and varied nation, that really any kind of city you go to is going to feel, much different. So I think if you're looking at your potential assignments and you're thinking back to that TDY to KC from 7 or 8 years ago, it really it's if you like that, there's some of that down here, but it's a whole new experience. And so our last thing we're going to touch on. So you mentioned your AIM market experience, man, but the enlisted market, the ASCM, is different than that. But if you're in your market right now, we recently had a senior NCO reach out to us to learn more about like what they would be doing here. They may have seen 19th ESC and their ASCM and didn't really know much about what they're about. So I think it's important to educate yourself on that. And so if you don't know, if you're listening to this and maybe you don't really know much about 19th ESC, it's in your marketplace, you can reach out to G1 or to anyone here, really find out more about what we're about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, 19th ESC here, we are that sustainment command across the entire Korean Peninsula. So we are the ones who are getting the equipment where it needs to be, getting people where they need to be. And so with this important mission, I know that someone who may be in some of those sustainer MOSs or AOCs will find the work they do here to be very much rewarding, because that's one of the beauties of actually Korea and a lot of other places is when you come here, you're actually now operating in that I hate to call it this, but that battlefield, if you will, that we're all preparing for. So that is our mission here, to take care of this peninsula. And so that itself makes this a unique experience for you professionally. And so with that, there are a host of different things that you can do across this command, and we're located not just in Daegu, as Captain Abuan had mentioned about the organizations here in Daegu, but we're dispersed. We have units up in Humphreys. We have them up in KC, a little bit in Yongsan, still barely. So we're all over the Korean map, literally, and so I highly suggest to anybody who's thinking about a change, something different in their career, and get a chance to really utilize that MOS skill that they have. They'll get a great opportunity to do that in the 19th ESC. Yeah,
just a couple episodes ago, we were talking to a couple of our finance soldiers from KC who won the best warrior competition down here. So yeah, lots of opportunities, and just educate yourself. That's a big thing, and it's both if you're already in Korea and thinking of coming here. But I want to thank both of you for coming by. Captain Abuan, we'll hopefully see you again while you're here in the studio. Chief, thanks for making it, coming back, making a return trip.
It is my pleasure.
But thank you for listening to the Every Soldier Counts podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.